Academica Media. You are listening to Charter School Superstars, bringing you the voices of an education revolution.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Ryan Kairalla from Doral College, and our guest this week on the program is the founding partner of Bloomwell Group, a national consulting company that works with charter schools and nonprofits to formulate effective solutions to their strategic challenges. Recently, our guest presented a session at the 2021 National Charter School Conference on how charters can maintain effective recruitment strategies amid the COVID pandemic. You can find out more about our guest's work by visiting www.bloomwellgroup.com. We are happy to welcome back Lyman Millard onto Charter School Superstars. Hi, Lyman. Great to see you again.
Hey, Ryan. Thanks so much. Really appreciate you having me back.
Very excited to have you back. Entirely my fault that we did not have you on again sooner. I really enjoyed our conversation a couple years ago. We're going to not let as much time pass between our conversations because I learn a lot from you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. There were one or two things going on in the world between today and our last conversation. So
really, you think? I feel like it's been kind of boring, the last year or two. No real
Pretty
major
humdrum,
world
right?
events. All right. Well, since you brought it up, let's talk about that. Because when I think
Sure.
of folks like you, Lyman, who work in the line of work that you do, who are providing consulting services for charter schools, I would imagine that the COVID pandemic would significantly change the nature of the kind of consulting projects that are coming in the door for you with these charters. They have different needs. They have different questions. And so I'm curious, has the pandemic changed the nature of your projects? Are you doing certain types of projects now than you weren't doing, say, in 2018 or 2019?
Yeah, well, I would say first and foremost, my most important role in the charter sector is that as a charter school parent. I have 3 children that attend an amazing charter school here in Cleveland called the Intergenerational School. And so just, shifting our whole world, and as a school was able to stand up some online learning really, really quickly and incredibly responsive. And I just give them huge marks for, first of all, assessing the needs of our community, because it's a very diverse community at that school. And there are a lot of kids that are free and reduced lunch. And so, my wife and I were very fortunate. We were able to get Chromebooks and had, had Wi-Fi running already. And so it's super easy for us to pivot, but a lot of other families in our school community did not have those resources. And so, and this is one of the things that I just love about working in this sector is that charter school leaders are being confronted with challenges all the time and unexpected challenges. And so the response is almost always, all right, well, what are we going to do now? And so watching our school and our principal and the teachers really assess very quickly who needed what technology, who needed a Chromebook, who needed a hotspot, getting the funds to pay for all of that for some of our more under-resourced families, and getting that all up and getting, pivoting from in-person to online in a matter of weeks, and passing out those, making sure everyone had that equipment, and that folks that needed, meals were getting those. And it wasn't just my school. We have the good fortune of working with schools and school leaders across the country, and seeing folks at like Vista College Prep in Phoenix, Arizona, doing similar work, and folks at Hennepin up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I mean, we saw it school after school after school, both folks that we work with and friends and partners in this space reacting so quickly. Was just, it really, every time I heard another story, it reinforced why I love being in this sector, why I've been in for decades, and it's because the people are so driven by what's right for kids, and whatever it takes mentality. And it's like, okay, we have another challenge. All right, now what are we going to do? And that perspective and approach just was really inspirational. So first and foremost, a lot of, in terms of the work, a lot of it was similar, but we're just sort of there was a lot more urgency to some of the community outreach and that we help with, and how is it that we're going to do this in a new context. I would say the biggest sort of, not really opportunity, but the biggest project that was different was that we partnered with the Charter School Growth Fund, which is this amazing sort of social venture philanthropy nonprofit out of Colorado. And, they're funding some of the growth of some of the highest performing networks around the country serving low-income kids. And so we partnered with them to really scour the nation, of their portfolio members, and do deep dives into, okay, how are you responding to this? Both from just making sure your families are okay and set, and it was very different experiences, because we were working with folks from the West Coast and Los Angeles and the Bay Area that were having one experience with the pandemic versus folks in Colorado and Texas, Chicago, and then New York City, which was was being decimated at the beginning, and how each of those schools were responding first and foremost to meeting their families' needs, and then to continuing to enroll students, and being able to learn from those folks and share that both with the schools within the Charter School Growth Fund's portfolio. But again, a real testament to both the Charter School Growth Fund and this sector in general was that they were very open source. They're like, look, this is valuable information. It would be almost immoral for us to hoard all this great knowledge. And they were very, very generous with sharing those insights and leading practices around the country.
There's lot to like about your answer there. I have an ear-to-ear smile over here because I love hearing the stories, and there's so many of them, of charter schools rising to the occasion. We getting to see the best of our administrators, of our teachers, of our board members, rising to the occasion, coming together to find solutions where there just doesn't seem to be any during something as unprecedented as this pandemic. And it's great to see Bloomwell Group really working alongside these schools, partnering with folks like in the Charter School Growth Fund to create solutions for these schools. And I have 100 stories just like yours, Lyman, that just really just revitalized and just reinforced my belief in how incredible some of these schools are. Let's talk about charter school recruitment now, because recently you presented a session at the 2021 National Charter School Conference about how charter schools can maintain effective recruitment strategies during crises like the COVID pandemic. And I'd like to talk to you about that presentation. But first, can you tell us a little bit generally about how the pandemic has changed the recruitment game for charters?
Yeah, I think a lot of folks, their initial response was, we need to pivot completely to digital outreach, especially as communities were locked down, as the schools were closed. Our most successful strategy for building enrollment, both in our own practice and practices that we've seen around the country, is this idea of bringing families into your school, letting them see for themselves, letting them meet the teachers, letting them meet the staff. If you can, make arrangements to meet the students and other families. That's sort of try before you buy kind of approach is the most effective way, I'm convinced, to build enrollment, because
families love to kick the tires.
Oh, right. Well, but you think about it, right? Like, I'm a dad of 3 kids, as I mentioned. I mean, if I'm going to send my kids to a place for 8 hours a day for 9 years of their life, trust and believe I want to meet the people that are running the place and get a sense for it. And so that key strategy was unavailable to us. So I think the biggest pivot was trying to come up with ways of creating a similar experience remotely. What was interesting was it did create some opportunities, and it took us a little while with some of our clients to really get it. It's like the first couple of online community meetings at my kids' schools. The first couple of 1 or 2 were a little shaky, but then got a sense of what worked and what didn't, what technology we needed, but also how is it that we're going to create an experience where it isn't just one person, talking in a shaky camera on Zoom. And so we were able to get with some of the folks that we worked with really creative about bringing in those other voices. And it's like, okay, we have this opportunity where families don't have to leave their house. So how is it that we can, first of all, connect with them, right? It's going to be much easier for them to get on a virtual meeting than have to put all the kids in the car and schlep down and, or worry about childcare and, food and whatnot. And so how is it that we can create a really rich experience for them that isn't just one person talking directly into camera? And, with that kind of being forced to be creative, again, charter school leaders, that's why I love working with them, we came up with some really, really amazing ways of bringing that experience onto video. And a lot of it was either, some folks had some really good video that we were able to cut together and make that part of the presentation, and they would bring in the teacher and they would bring in the art teacher. A lot of the schools were doing really creative ways of keeping kids engaged with learning, both academic learning, but also physical learning, right? My own kid's school, was having, these different challenges, and they were having dance classes and they were having yoga. So it's like, how do we show those experiences? Some of the other folks that we were working with didn't have a ton of video, but they did have a lot of pictures. So we were able to put together kind of these collages and short little video pieces to play over the person speaking, so that folks could have a sense of what it looked like. Other folks, we would do like virtual tours where, it was literally like, all right, the recruitment coordinator grabs their cell phone and is like walking around, and the nice thing, right, exactly. But the nice thing is like folks were like, we're not expecting this slick and highly produced and super fancy version of anything, and so that like authenticity and shaky cam and all that was fine. Like people really responded to that. I think the other thing that we then, as things started to open up a little bit, was really interesting. One of the other things that we do a lot, just sort of in more normal times, I'm happy to talk about, where this fits in a broader strategy, is knocking on doors and talking to families in a very targeted way, not just kind of going door to door to door, but like really figuring out where those families are and knocking on doors. And for a long time, for good reason, we were hesitant to do that.
Sure.
But around sort of November, December, we saw a lot of that working in more of an electoral context, with some campaigns that we were helping out with, and discovered that, first of all, everybody was home. And
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Right? And second of all, most of the adults were really excited to be able to have a conversation with another adult. So
an outsider has arrived.
Right. It's like, please, God, somebody other than my children or my spouse to actually have a live conversation with. Very, very specific about the protocols. Always in a mask, knock on the door, take a step back, just to make sure that like we weren't making any assumptions about what folks were comfortable with. But we had, so going into that winter and early spring, we had some of our most successful canvassing outings that we've ever had, just because the hit rate was so high. We could actually go out, usually you're having to go out, early evening or weekend. We could go out in the middle of the day, which the folks who were doing the actual canvassing liked, because it was very convenient for them. But we were finding, folks home. That's obviously changed as the world has opened up. But sort of some of the things that it really forced us to do, because we weren't able to do the broader outreach. We had to be much more targeted, and that's actually changed the way that we're doing student recruitment heading into this summer period, which for a lot of the schools that we work with and a lot of the communities that we work with, this is sort of the time where they're getting 30-40% of their enrollment. And so it's help us really clarify, okay, some of these things we didn't do, and we didn't see it that negative of an impact, but some of these other more targeted tactics, this is just what we're going to do from now on.
That's an interesting dimension to this, is because we've been talking about how you have to change your strategies because of the pandemic. But I think another thread of this that I want to explore even more with you that I think is pretty cool is because you had to change your approach slightly because of the pandemic, you learned lessons about recruitment generally that you could then bring into your general recruitment strategy even when we're not in a pandemic scenario. So can you give us an idea of another kind of reform that you tested out during the pandemic that you see schools doing under normal recruiting circumstances?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest change has been a lot of the schools that we work with, their traditional approach to marketing has been, it's like spray and pray, I think is probably how I would describe it. We're going to throw a bunch of stuff out there, traditional things that we traditionally associate with marketing, and we're going to hope that the right person at the right time sees the right thing and will then call us, or even better yet, go onto our website and just fill out an enrollment form. And there are communities where that happens, right? And it's usually where there's not a ton of options, and like there's only one or two charter schools in the area, and so it's any thing that's not the status quo, families are signing up for. And we've worked with a bunch of startup schools this year that's the community that they're in, right? They're one, they're the only one or one of two, and so for them, the enrollment side of it's easy. We're helping them with more other communications challenges, but for the vast majority of the schools and communities that we're working in, be it in California, Denver, Minneapolis, Cleveland, New York City, DC. There are a lot of Chicago, Nashville. There are just a lot of schools, and so there are a lot of options, and so families are being much more choosy, and so we've had to be a lot more targeted. And so what we've really shifted to, for the most part, is getting a really good, high quality lists of leads, and then targeting those folks with direct outreach, with phone calls, with knocking on doors, and then like the marketing is sort of put kind of on top of that. So the marketing is supporting that more direct, targeted outreach, rather than and we're trying to convert leads rather than just trying to get leads and then turn those folks into enrollment.
So the lesson I'm pulling from this is that sort of top-level marketing that you're talking about is a supplement, but perhaps not a substitute for direct targeted outreach if you want to have good enrollment outcomes either in a pandemic or in a non-pandemic world. You can find out more about our guest's work by visiting www.bloomwellgroup.com. Lyman Millard joining us here on Charter School Superstars. Blowing my mind. I thought I had figured out charter school recruitment just from what I've seen, the charter schools in my area doing and just what they've been able to overcome through the pandemic. But I'm learning so much just from talking to you right now, and I really, really appreciate it. Before we let you go, Lyman, one last question for you. If with the snap of your fingers you could make any change to the education system, what change would it be?
There's like 30 things that I would like to tweak. But I think if I had to pick one, I would love to ensure that, especially the kids that are in kind of the most disadvantaged areas in our country, didn't have to constantly make do with less, right? That the kids who needed the most support in our communities were able to get that real, small school, caring adults, whatever it takes approach, because I've seen it make just such a tremendous difference in the lives of the kids, in the lives of their families, and in the lives of their communities. And so, like, I would want to be able to replicate that experience in every underserved area in the country.
No argument here. Again, you can find out more about our guest's work by visiting www.bloomwellgroup.com. Lyman Millard, everybody. Lyman, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you again. Have a terrific weekend. I know we got the long weekend ahead, and don't be a stranger. Love to have you on again real soon.
My pleasure. And one thing I did want to say is that for folks that weren't able to attend the National Charter School Conference, I did put an annotated version of that presentation up on our website. It's under the resources section. I mean, I believe in being open source with a lot of this stuff. So if any of this is interesting to you, go grab that presentation. Always, if anybody has any questions about these sorts of things, I love talking about it. We always say it, in our organization, advice is free. And so, we want to be a resource to the community because a lot of folks have been, just helpful to us over the years.
Well, we appreciate you sharing the advice, and we appreciate you sharing the stories about the victories that you and the schools you work with have been having, because both of those are equally motivating and enriching for those of us listening to this program. Thank you so much for being on, and we'll see you all
Ryan.
next week.
The views expressed on the preceding program have been those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Academica, its clients, staff, affiliates, or advertisers.